I think out of all the Marvel characters, Iron Man is my favorite. And I got to actually tell it from the beginning, from the point where he's part Howard Hughes, James Bond, to the point where he's desperately ill, and a complete changing of his personality from looking inward to looking outward. You can do that in a television series, but it really has impact when you can tell it in a nice 70-minute movie.
When we began developing the story, Frank came to the table with a real vision of his own already. He had rough designs of Tony, of Iron Man, of the elements he wanted to bring in, the kinds of buildings, the different set pieces and lighting and palette. I mean, he just had such a vision that he brought forward. We were just blown away. We knew this was the guy to do it.
We were given a lot of liberty by Avi on this. I mean, the first script that came in wasn't really to anybody's satisfaction. It was not Greg's script. It was trying too hard to be a cartoon. And that's not what Avi wanted, and that's not what anybody really on the crew really wanted either. We had a kind of a round-robin discussion about things, and we came up with a lot of these different ideas. Avi says, well, let's just do the origin story. And when he did that, everything, the floodgates just opened up, and the ideas just poured in. In the comic book, you know, all the story was told in, you know, like a page. And so there's a lot of in-between that you have to fill in. And so we took some liberties with the fill-in, but really good ones.
Will he live?
For the moment, but his heart has suffered great damage.
Originally, it was set in Vietnam. Tony Stark was a munitions manufacturer who was there on some sort of, you know, fact-finding, sell to the highest bidder kind of thing. He steps on a mine, and a piece of shrapnel is lodged in his chest, and it's moving closer, and he's going to die soon. Working together with this scientist, they create a device to keep him alive, which is the chest plate. And from there springs the idea to create an entire suit of armor that he can bust them out of their captivity with. What made Stan Lee great was he came up with the angst-ridden hero, a guy who was a millionaire, who had it all, you know, I mean, had everything, the girls, the fast cars, the money, and all this kind of stuff, and suddenly he's trapped in this big, giant iron lung. Basically, he comes back home, and so he has to kind of reconcile his life, you know, from what it was to what it is now, and the fact that he has this condition, and that he can't, you know, obviously he can't go chasing girls because he, you know, they wind up in bed, and he's got this big iron lung on, you know. So, I mean, his whole life is turned upside down as a result of this thing.
We wanted to make sure that it was something a little more current as far as, I mean, that didn't place it in a specific time and place like the Vietnam War. But we also wanted it to be something that really contrasted with Iron Man's technology, and ancient China just seemed like, wow, you know, that's a great contrast there.
Iron Man is someone Avi's very passionate about, and he wanted more and more and more, and he said there's not enough going on, this is too thin, we need more, it needs to be epic, it needs to be everything we'd ever want to do in a live-action film and can never afford to pull off. And something that Avi is just so enamored with is the Hall of Armor. And to begin the story, an origin story where a guy goes from a normal guy, a brilliant normal guy, to an ironclad hero, to having a Hall of Armory, was a real brain bender.
You have to ask yourself, how the hell did Tony Stark create this amazing piece of machinery within 2 or 3 weeks' time? It doesn't make any sense. Craig Kyle came up with a really brilliant idea of, well, it's because he's already created the armor. He's created dozens of these armors through, you know, decades of work at Stark International. That is all top secret. So it's like he knows what will and what won't work, and what he can use and what he can't.
What are we gonna do now? We get to work.
I wanted to make sure when we're telling this story that you don't just kind of roll your eyes and think, now, okay, the guy's got heart damage and he builds this entire armor by himself. One of the reasons why we stuck Rhodey in there with him, which he wasn't with him in the origin stories, but it just made sense, you know, that he would have this guy in there who's been through this journey with him from the very beginning, and establishing that, yes, Tony Stark has been working on some stuff on his own, and just hasn't revealed it to his friend. And this is the first time that Rhodey has realized it.
This thing's amazing. Where'd you get this idea?
Just something I came up with.
What we wanted to do also in that scene is provide him at least with the means of doing it. Some of the equipment that was already there that they had been using, you know, to raise this ancient dig site.
We went through several variations of that armor. We have to kind of follow the pattern of the gray armor, but we have to take that extra turn that makes it somewhat unique to our show. The starting point was obviously the Kirby designs from the original comic book of the gray armor, which is all very smooth and it's very machine tooled. And as we went through it, our meetings with Avi Arad, you know, he pointed out that, listen, he's here, he doesn't have a lot of time to build these things. I want, you know, it's like we need to really scuff it up a lot. We need to look like this thing was put together fairly quick. And so then we started adding the rivets. And then we started to add the kind of a medieval look to it. Because it had to be really scary in a way. When we first see this thing, I mean, it's a weapon. It should be extremely scary.
The Iron Man armor looks great in the movie. It's very true to what's been in the comics over the years. You know, obviously it's got a few little tweaks for animation, but I was thrilled with it. I mean, it's our character, and it's gonna be moving on the screen, so it's gonna be fantastic. Even without the armor, Tony, you're talking about a guy who became an Avenger, who actually was trained by Captain America, the greatest living fighter that we have, hand-to-hand combatant, who is in the Marvel Universe. So Tony was taught by Cap to use his smarts and never to give up. Much of what goes into a good Iron Man story is much of, again, what goes into making Tony Stark an interesting character, which is putting him in situations where he has to question the things that he's doing.
You know, he's a guy who makes his own rules and steps on friends sometimes, maybe inadvertently, but he does, affecting his friendship with James Rhodes, not even realizing that he's done so. Blaming his father for a lot of things that the father may or may not take responsibility for, but he still blames him just the same. And having him actually kind of deal with this stuff through the course of the movie. And, you know, I think creating the fiber of his character is almost as important as designing cool action sequences.
Iron Man is one of the most flawed characters, if not the most flawed character in the Marvel Universe. Marvel characters are built on a simple construct that even though they are these fantastic superheroes who can do these bigger-than-life things and have these more-than-human powers, their alter egos are as human and as frail as any of us.
To me, Tony Stark is probably a guy who is he's a millionaire playboy, but also like very smart, and he's sort of like Bill Gates, but if Bill Gates were very, very cool.
We had to think of the places that really show off the amazing aspects of Iron Man. So knowing what our story was and the gathering of these mystic bands and why they were so important allowed us then to go and think about where can we place them. And again, I'll give credit to Avi for that. He wanted to see ice. He wanted to see ocean. He wanted to see lava. He wanted to see elements that any other hero put into would most likely die. And, you know, that's largely what Iron Man is.
I didn't want Iron Man's villain in this movie to be Justin Hammer, a business rival, you know. He has a small circle of enemies that really would carry a movie, and the Mandarin obviously is the best choice.
They didn't want to do the old wrinkled guy with the reins from the original, a stereotypical Chinese villain. We didn't want to get into that again. We didn't want to get into the modern gangster, and our take on it, you know, is, I think, will be quite surprising.
Ancient China has a lot of these vile dynasties that were just brutal. And I thought it would be more interesting, actually, to see the Mandarin as somebody who came from that, as opposed to somebody today who pretends to be that.
Get away from him! This is a film that has a lot more technology in it by its nature. So the ability to use CGI and make it look natural you know, was something that was an easy decision for us. The Iron Man suits, the elementals who are made of stone to begin with, That's where we're primarily going to be using the CGI, because we're not looking for emotion to be portrayed through CGI. We feel that that's better done in 2D and hand-drawn animation.
For the DVD, I'm doing 3 pieces of artwork. I'm doing the cover to the DVD, and I'm doing 2 other spot illustrations, one which features the Mandarin and Iron Man going toe-to-toe, and another piece which is the Mandarin and his 4 elementals sort of leaping at us and looking kind of cool and menacing. So
The performances are there, the designs are there, the storyboard was there. It just comes down to making sure that when it's animated, it's there.
Iron Man is this beautiful, futuristic, modern weapon that's very Western in its creation and design. And when you bring in elements like China and ancient Chinese mythology and characters like the Mandarin, it's a beautiful contrast to what and who Iron Man and Tony Stark is. For us, this is a film about East meets West. It's technology versus mysticism and magic. It's where the opposites really come together and blend to make this epic story of one hero's journey that affects the entire world.
A prophecy needs no one to believe in it, for it gathers strength from those who do not. And when it has faded from all memory, it becomes its most powerful. This is the lost age of China, a time of violence and evil, a dynasty predating all others, and ruled by a dark emperor, the Mandarin. Fearing the end of his reign, the Mandarin sought to preserve his empire. As the afterlife grew near, he completed his temple, carved an army from the earth, and forged a covenant with the deities of death. But such a pact carries a high price. The sacrifice of every life within the Mandarin's mighty empire. To aid in collecting these souls, the deities endowed him with 5 elementals, demons from the underworld. In 1 year's time, the Mandarin and his dark forces stripped the land of all living things. And when the last drop of innocent blood was spilt, the pact was sealed. In exchange for these souls, the Mandarin was presented with 5 jeweled bands that would grant him eternal life and all the power of the underworld. But these gifts would not be his until he himself had passed through the very gates of death. So upon the Mandarin's last breath of life, the land poured over the city. There it would remain buried for 3,000 years. Now all that remains is the prophecy that foretells the Mandarin's return. It speaks of the day when his temple will rise and the elementals will awaken. They will gather the bands of the underworld and with them resurrect their master. But China has forgotten this dark chapter and fears not the echoes of the past, nor believes the prophecy. The Jade Dragons know the truth, however, and for centuries have kept the prophecy at bay. But destiny will not be cheated. The day of the Mandarin is upon us.
By doing a film about Doctor Strange, you know, we challenged ourselves on many levels.
This was to tell an origin that people remember and believe is truthful to the character.
You know, the origin is interesting all by itself. A guy whose entire life is in his hand as a surgeon, losing him.
We learn a lot more about why Stephen Strange was the person that he was before he became, you know, the Sorcerer Supreme.
I think this is a scenario where it's a nice, intimate story about one man's journey that will connect with the audience, both old fans and people who have no idea who Doctor Strange is.
Frank! What the hell was that thing? I don't know. Run!
There's something down here! Get me out! Get me out! Help me!
The beast is shrouded. Use the eye.
It has tasted flesh. We must not let it escape.
Agreed.
I will conceal our efforts.
What the hell? the legs!
No beast has ever come this close to the sanctum before. Mordo, does this not concern you?
The creature is dead. I will leave the worrying to you.
What?
He saw us?
Yes,
Through your spell?
it would appear so.